So the topic for today is a topic that is very top of mind for me. What's up, Joshua? Good morning, good day, afternoon to you. All right, it's just a tad fuzzy. Okay, so hopefully it will get better. I've got my DSLR. It could simply just be the fidelity, pixelation, not focus. Joshua, that's a LinkedIn Live issue. I don't know what I can do about that. I'm looking at my screen here, and it's looking pretty clear. So I'm hoping that if the internet quality increases, it gets better. So we will do our best. In the meantime, as long as you can hear me, that's a good step. So this idea of intent-based sales process, right? And I've talked about this topic now a few different times. And you're going to be hearing about this from me for a long time, at least for the next, 3 to 6 months. This is going to be my big, call it rallying cry, which is this concept that where I feel this comes from. And I'd love to hear all of you too, if you agree or not. What I feel like has happened in the sales process is that we have been overly focused on qualification. We have been overly focused on the first part of the conversation being 100% about qualification criteria, gathering the right information that I know my boss wants to see, all of those types of things, instead of understanding the customer and truly, look, the word consultative sales, that's been around for a long time, right? That's not necessarily like a brand new phrase. But with that being said, I do feel like we have lost sight of that a little bit, that we have video quality is second to that. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. So what I feel like has happened is when I listen into calls, so we work for those of you who don't know, I run when people think Jake's just on LinkedIn, it's like, no, we have 40 something plus people, I think 42 or something. I'm on the phone every day talking to VPs of sales, CEOs about their company, their business, etc. So this is all very firsthand knowledge versus, just purely, call it opinions here. It's that, again, whenever we see the activities that people are requiring for a first call, we hear time and time again, like the first call truly is this qualification call that if you're a customer is completely worthless. It's like, and especially, God forbid, someone came inbound, right? If someone comes inbound, I'm just telling you all, like your goal is to try to get them like through the process as effectively and efficiently as possible. That's productive for the customer, not just that's productive for you. And what I feel like is happening is, we started to create the sales process that was so focused on qualification up front that we forgot that like people today may have access to more information than they did last year, the year before, etc. And so can you imagine, I'm going to talk about 3 different ways that people kind of come into today and why we need to think about this concept of having intent-based sales processes and not a one-size-fits-all. Most companies right now, whether your first meeting is set inbound or outbound, you get the exact same experience, right? And I'd love to hear whether it's, a comment, you could throw the thumbs up or the wave or whatever, you can drop it in the comments, so you can just hit the button, the like button or the whatever on the LinkedIn. I want to know how many of you treat the people differently. So if someone comes inbound, they get a completely different experience than someone who comes outbound. If your team's doing that, great, let me know, because we're just not seeing a ton of it. Now, we are seeing some teams, reroute inbound leads, faster to account executives, but still for the most part, it's kind of a one size fits all. The reality for everyone listening right now is that people find you, and again, there's lots of flavors between these 3, but one is cold outbound. I don't know anything. I just became aware of a problem, but I'm kind of interested in learning more. Totally fine. You reached out to me cold outbound. So I saw something pop up on the internet. Kind of interesting. All right. Number 2 is I've done that. It's been 3 to 6 months. I think now I need to actually maybe go look at something, but I still haven't done maybe a ton of research, but I've done enough, right? I'm coming in and like, I've got at least a good idea of, what does this space looks like, etc. Number 3 is I've came inbound, could even maybe be cold outbound, but probably comes inbound. I've come inbound. I took a look at your website. I looked at some of your service offerings. I then went and Googled the space and went and looked at 3 or 4 other people's offerings. And then I came inbound. So let's call those like high intent, medium intent, and low to no intent. The issue today is this, is like if Johnny Smith, I set up a cold email and he sets or she sets up a meeting, or here's an even better one. That cold person had downloaded a piece of content. Right now, we look at intent is based on a lead score. That doesn't tell us, that tells us one version of intent. But the other version of intent, right, is how far down the process am I? Like how much education, how much research have I actually done? And guess what? That white paper I downloaded, it had nothing to do. It was about a topic. You know, like too often what I see is that, again, we're just not focused enough on understanding how much education, research, like true intent. Because if I come inbound and I've done my research and I've done this, that is better than any download, whatever it is. Because guess what? I took my own time out to go and do the research to make sure that I found out like who the competition is. I went and did the research on like, you know, who I think is going to be the best fit, etc. So again, I want all of you to think about today, you've got 3 different types of people to deal with. Low to no intent. And by the way, those are people usually that download one piece of content as well too. People that may be inbound or outbound, but have done some amount of research. So they have some basic education on like the space, what's happening. And 3, people that have done a lot of research, right? They've maybe, and by a lot, I mean, maybe probably a few hours, right? As a part of this. And so when we think about these people, the question now becomes, what should the first interaction with a customer be? Because, you know, again, like my friend Chris Walker, he talks a lot about dark social. That third person, that person who did research, went and talked to a few peers. Hey, I'm thinking about investing in something in this space. How well do you know these 3 players? All of those, just like Chris Walker calls that dark social, parts of that. I call that people that have started to become extremely high intent buyers that your CRM or marketing automation platform knows nothing about. And so that person comes inbound and on paper, you're like, well, they haven't downloaded our content. They haven't done this or that. And instead what we do is we treat the person that has low to no intent, but has downloaded a few pieces of content. We actually treat that lead better than we do people that might have very high intent, but we couldn't track how they got there. And so I think for a lot of companies, again, as you're thinking through your intent funnels, you have to realize more and more and more people are being influenced through word of mouth, a LinkedIn post, some question I asked in a Slack channel that you can't see about a partner or whatever than ever before. So more and more of those things that used to be calculated into lead score that let the sales team know, hey, this person is good to go, we actually can't track. And so as we think about that, so that means we have to be able to understand it in our first conversation. So Christopher, what is up? Christopher has a quick question. Again, everyone, please feel free. I've got the questions up over here. So if you do have a question or you're like, Jake, that's bullshit, I don't believe it, or you really believe it, and you're like, yes, feel free. He says, what are the qualitative categories of intent? I think I know what you're saying, Christopher, but if you want to add some more color as I start to answer, feel free to do it. So the qualitative categories of intent, I think are, you know, what I'd mentioned before. We call it like low to no, medium, and high. And just, you know, there's every flavor in between. I think the question that you're asking too is, how do you know? Right? Because like, you know, you think about it, it's like, why do we like MEDDICC? Why do we like BANT? Why do we like insert other qualification? They're like these very black and white things. Budget, economic buyer, champion. Like these are things where I can be like, this is the one thing. This is the other thing. This is that person. Here's the compelling event, right? That they're, you know, that they have to deal with. Whatever your methodology of choice is, you know, insert whatever. The questions that we're not asking. So qualitatively, Christopher, you can tell me if I'm answering your question. If not, feel free to rephrase it and I'll try to answer it better. Is we're not doing the qualitative understanding of where is this person in terms of their education or knowledge in the space. Because to me, that's the highest intent. As a CEO or as someone who is busy, I am not going to waste my time getting educated in the space or getting up to speed if I'm not interested in potentially making a call, right? And if I'm not at that point where I'm like, you know what, this is something we really need to look at. Let me go and do some research, or have, someone on my team go and do some research as well too. Right. And so when I think about this, it's and Christopher, yes, that is exactly what I'm saying, is that we should be shaping the way that we have our first and subsequent interactions based on the customer's level of education. And again, to me, that is the ultimate intent, right? Again, like some of these things, like people said, like 6 sense, consideration, awareness, purchase decision, potentially. Yeah, potentially. I definitely would say some of those tools could fit. The problem I see is like, again, 6 sense still can't track a Slack interaction that I had. 6 sense can't track a LinkedIn post that I interacted with. 6 sense can't track a lot of this stuff. So again, although I think 6 sense and tools like it are a step better, or even like, Zoom Info's got some intent, Bombard, etc. These are steps closer. But again, let's go back to this concept of like dark intent, which is like, if I'm going out and asking my peers, I'm DMing them on LinkedIn, I'm interacting with posts, I'm starting to, gather in information, etc. It's that from these opportunities here, right? That all that activity I couldn't track. 6 sense can't track that, right? My marketing automation, so you can get first party from people who interact with your content. You can get third party from 6 sense. There's this, dark party, which is like, it means there's all these things that are happening behind the scenes now to be able to that I can't see. And so, Christopher, to your point, yes, what we need to be able to do is change the mindset of the first conversation. The very beginning, and I tried to even, I thought I'd do it like a step further, is I tried to get real tactical. So if you go and look at the body for this post or this event, I actually tried to like write out a little bit of a sample script, like after you do the agenda as a part of this. Steve said, it's not so much that we like them, leadership likes them because it gives them gate. Yes, exactly. Right. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Steven, the problem is, again, it's just like everything in marketing. Just because we can track it doesn't mean it's worth tracking. I said it, right? Just because we can track XYZ. Now, accumulation of things can equal maybe some signals of intent, but maybe there's some things that just don't matter anymore, right? As a part of this. And so don't get me wrong. Is there anything wrong with understanding if someone has some of these qualifications? No, there's nothing wrong with it, but we're missing that the first set of questions companies need to ask are around the prospect's level of education and understanding of the space and where they're at in that continuum. Not educated at all, need to be educated, right? Then when I look at the end, it's this person has been they have done a certain amount of research, right? They've done a certain amount of understanding the competitor. If you get on a first call, and this is just for anybody intuitively, if you get on that first call, and let's just, Steven, and they say, hey, yeah, I've actually already talked to 2 or 3 of your competitors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How much more does that show you their level of intent than, well, they said they had budget, or I identified them as the economic buyer? A lot more, right? So then when I think about this, it's like, I need to understand where this person is from their education level, right? How far are they? And now sales is more and more becoming project management. Okay, Jake, you're here. Cool. I'm going to meet you there. You've told me you've already researched my competitors. I asked a couple follow-ups to see kind of what you know about the world, how far down. Okay, Jake is here. He's already here. Doesn't matter if I'm the champion. Doesn't matter. Now, how can I fast track Jake? I asked the same question to someone else. Great. So I know that we reached out to you because I'm going to show that I know that you were a cold lead. Since we set the meeting, have you had a chance to, do research on, kind of where the sector's headed, how these things are happening, et cetera? Right. And again, as I think more and more about this, and then if that person's here, well, guess what I need to do? I need to educate them first. I need to educate them on the nuances, et cetera. Right. So again, for me, at least in particular, we've got to try to understand. So then we know the type of conversation we need to have. If I know where you're at on this education continuum and the research and where you've done, man, if you're at the end, and I'm telling you, we are seeing this in big purchases. people are coming inbound. They're like, yeah, look, I've already talked to my boss. I've got an idea of like how much money we can spend. I've talked to your 2 or 3 other people. Let's go. Like, I understand these things as a part of this. How do I now fast track that person? Because right now, most processes are set up like, okay, no matter what the first call is, I then have this conversation second. My boss told me I'm not allowed to have the demo on the first call. Well, that's stupid. If someone's coming to you, if as a blanket rule, you're like, we don't demo on the first call. But someone comes and says, look, Jake, I've done this amount of research, right? I've done this amount of, I understand these factors about the space. I want to understand how you guys are different. Your team has to be ready to have that conversation. As opposed to, imagine again, if I'm a buyer and that's where I'm at in my buying process. And then I come to you and my first interaction is with an inbound SDR. It's like, yeah, okay, Jake, well, that's great. But let me understand more. And it's like, oh my gosh, dude, what aren't you understanding here? Like I don't need to be qualified right now. I need to kind of have this conversation. I need to be able to move forward as a part of this. I need like somebody who can add value right now because I'm coming to you already at step 3 and you just don't know it yet because you can't track it. So let's see. Christopher had a couple comments in here. It's like the amount intent doesn't seem to have much precision. It seems blunt. So if we're shaping the messaging to align with the various stages of intent, it's like, how do we get the tools or heuristics that give us some probabilistic models around effective language or tools? Let's say they need, okay, so this is a really good question. What Christopher's asking, at least right now, is how do you, I understand what you want, but I can't give it to you, Christopher. You're going to have to know how to ask it on the first call. So like what he's asking for is like, again, it's just like, again, this concept of dark social. What's the impact of one organic LinkedIn post? I can't track that. So instead, what we have to do is train teams in the first call how to diagnose where they're at. And if people say that they've done these 4 activities, we put them in this bucket. But guess what? Those activities aren't necessarily budget. It's not necessarily authority. It's not necessarily need. It's not necessarily time. Probably some weird elements of all of those, right? Instead, it's where are you at and how much you know about this space. Because that's where I need to start with you. Again, if you're at that final intent level, why can't I fast track that deal to get done in the next week or 2? Why should I put it through the same process? You need to be able to prepare to have somebody not meaning the customer is disrespectful. Steven, Steven, I hear you. Steven said not meeting the customer where they are at in the buying process is disrespectful. I agree, but most companies aren't doing it. Most companies are saying, no matter how you buy or how you want to buy, we're going to put you through our process. And for me, someone else talked about this, my boss, whatever. I'm doing it because my boss is so locked in on this. Because again, keep in mind, here's why it matters now. When there wasn't as much publicly available information about companies and their pricing and their competition, everyone kind of came in with the same education level. So I didn't need to understand that. But today, and I'm just telling you, it's going to continue to shift this way. More and more people are going to come in with higher and higher and higher education intent. But again, the intent is based off of all the research they've done that you can't track. And so, Christopher, I get it, man, that we would want to really try to diagnose as much up front. That's great. We can use first-party data. We can use third-party data like 6 Sense. But we need to understand all the dark stuff that they did, and not in some like dark stuff, all the things that we can't see that they did to really understand intent. And so I think, we look at these first and third party data as like the gospel, and marketing is already seeing this. Marketing's already saying, well, maybe a download or a webinar attend is not like a hot lead. Like, yeah, no shit. Like everyone in sales is like, I know. Right. And it used to be maybe back in the day, whenever, again, I couldn't get information about you without like downloading things or going to a webinar, whereas now I can get it anywhere I want. So again, for a lot of you that are trying to think through this in the simple and easy way is that the first questions need to be able to diagnose where someone is from an education and research standpoint. Again, because to me, somebody who's more educated, has done more research, That to me is higher intent than any BANT, than any, if they're I don't care if they're an economic buyer or a champion. If they've done that much research, it really doesn't matter. I know that they and their company are taking this seriously. And so I think, Christopher, look, I'd love to give you something that's a little bit more quantitative, but I think that that's something that marketers and sales leaders are struggling with about social and word of mouth in general. But, look, how many of you are members of a Slack community? How many of you ever go in and ask questions to the Slack community or Quora or Reddit? So there's all these things that are happening that nobody can track. They're not on third party. 6 Sense can't track that, right? And all these different things, a DM on LinkedIn, I can't track that. So instead, in the sales process, we have to be able to triage. And that's the word here. So what I want all of you to go back and think about, what does my first interaction with my customer look like? And then the second thing I want you to think about, if someone is further down the intent and education research funnel, do I have a process to move them through quickly? Or do I treat everyone like the very beginning? Right? I'm convinced every SaaS company, maybe every, right? If you look at PLG, right? Product-led growth, that's the big craze of the last, call it year and a half. It is predicated on this, that people want to self-service. And I agree too. One of your high intent like levers should be like, hey, Jake, based on what you said here, I'm just going to send you the link and sign up. Great. Love that. Or how about that? Even better. I don't might even have to talk to someone. I can just sign up and then someone reaches out to me. I'll tell this story. If you follow my content, you've heard me tell it before, but I'll tell it because it's such a good example, which is my experience with Salesforce in December of this year. I wanted to prepay for Salesforce for the year for my company, right? If you own a business, then you know why I want to prepay. If you've had a good year, it's good. Prepay some expenses. I first reached out to support. I had no clue our account executive was. I said, hey, do you guys have a link I can go? And our bill was like $40,000, something like that. I said, hey, do you have a link where I can go and enter my credit card? They're like, no. Like, account executive has to get in touch with you. 2 or 3 days later, somebody gets in touch with me. Great. Hey, Jake, can we hop on a call? Ugh, dude, no. No, we cannot hop on a call. Okay. Where is the link for me to enter my credit card? I'll hop on a call with you in like 3 or 4 weeks. I don't have time. I just need to go. I just need to buy this. He had to send me a PDF. I had to print, or no, I'm sorry. I think I digitally did it. My wife then had to, I think maybe she had to print it. I couldn't get it to save. And then I had to re-upload. I had to re-upload it and send him this is Salesforce. I had to send a PDF credit card authorization. I was ready to run my Amex for $40K on the spot. I know I'm an early adopter, and that's not. But I'm telling you, this is where we're headed. People are going to be buying 6-figure items on credit cards all day. Because they're going to do their homework. They're like, look, this is the solution we need. And then let me come back. It's not that we won't need salespeople. We 100% will need salespeople. But where I want to see that salesperson in the process, that is what matters. Guess what? This group of people, they want to see a salesperson early. They don't know anything about the space. These people want to see it at like call 1 or 2. These people need a salesperson on the first call, and these people just need to self-serve because they're like, and then someone can catch up with them in 3 weeks. And so for a lot of you out there, that's what I want you to think about here, right? And just so you know, Stephen, I had that exact same experience with 2 vendors where we spent a combined with those 2 vendors of almost $80,000. And both of them, I had to enter my credit card in like a PDF to then send to them. And I'm telling you, probably a lot of you, your product, you can't buy either because we've been brainwashed to think like we can't talk about price on the first call or whatever, which used to be the case. But now, and this is the analogy that tends to hit home, everything B2C comes to B2B. And I want you to think about Amazon. How many of you have chosen a similar product because you could get it the next day on Amazon versus a product that might have been slightly better, but is going to take a week or 2 weeks? How many of you have done that? How many of you have picked a next day delivery, ease of use, let's go, one-click buying experience versus that might have even been a little bit more or whatever it is over something that was cumbersome? My friends, we are being trained in B2C how to buy. All those trends are coming to B2B. And so again, yes, Diego nailed this. Diagnose their knowledge of the space. I mean, my God, what is higher intent? someone who's uneducated, but they maybe have a project or resources or a timeline in place, but they don't really know a lot about it yet. Or no executive is spending time investing, getting up to speed on a space if they're not really interested in making a move. So again, for a lot of you, that's what I want you to think. How do I better meet my customer with where they're at on that continuum? Again, a lot of you, hopefully, maybe will even think about adding a self-service option. I really think any product that's not like super, super enterprise, you know, $500,000, 250,000, I think is in, it's a kind of a no-brainer to have some type of self-service option. I know it's terrifying. Like, what if we showed them the price? But I'm just telling you, like, more and more companies are going to lose deals due to friction. And people are like, oh my God, dude, I do not want to get on a call with you. Like, please just let me give you my money, you know? And again, I want you to think about, again, just how much your consumer buying behavior has changed over the last, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. And I want you to think how much the B2B buying process has changed. It's not as much, but as we get more and more used to frictionless selling, we're going to need a sales organization that knows how to get me to the right place as fast and effectively as possible versus putting the low intent people in the same process as the high intent people. So there you go. There's some food for thought on a Monday. Intent-based sales, intent based on research and education, not BANT, not MEDDICC. There's parts of MEDDICC and BANT that you could argue are part of this. I could see that. But I want us to think about that. Are we truly meeting a customer where they're at? Let's see. Caroline, I'll take this one question. I know, Steven, tell me about it. I remember there's like December 28th, and I'm like, look, dude, I'm not hopping on a call. You mentioned in your example that someone was a cold lead. Yeah, absolutely. Caroline, I think what I would probably try to do, I don't know if I would try to give people, if I set a meeting with someone and maybe I didn't have a meeting set with them for another like week or two, what I would try to do is send them some details ahead of the cold meeting. I'd say, hey, here's a quick like 2.5 minute demo. Here's like a quick white paper on like the space, why more VPs of operations are investing right now. So I would probably try to do some things to educate them ahead of time, right? And not with all like propaganda of like how we're the best, but like really truly, hey, look, here's some insights. Here's a report from Skaled. Here's a report from Gartner, like, wherever you find like, your content. But I would try to help to level up their education in advance. So that's all I got. If you guys have any questions, as always, DM me. If this is interesting for you and your company, if you're like, Jake, we need to have a follow-up, whatever, tag your leader, DM me. Happy to set some time up to talk to you all about this in detail, some of the work we're doing. But all of you need to think about it. This is the future, right? We got to triage people the same way marketing funnels triage people automatically. We've got to triage people in sales as well to move people through faster when they're ready to buy. So have a great rest of your Monday, everyone. I will see you on the next one.